Hello, welcome to our presentation on how to make a GCPD policy recommendation. So a little bit about the Governor's Committee on People with Disabilities. The Governor's Committee on People with Disabilities, or GCPD, has a mission to further opportunities for persons with disabilities to enjoy full and equal access to lives of independence, productivity, and self-determination. GCPD recommends changes in disability policies and programs in the areas of accessibility, communication, criminal justice, education, emergency preparedness, as well as employment, health, housing, transportation, and lastly, veterans. The committee also supports a network of committees on people with disabilities. We issue awards to promote greater awareness and promote compliance with disability-related laws. GCPD makes recommendations to the governor and the Texas legislature on disability issues. So now, how to make a policy recommendation. So first, what is a policy recommendation? Policy recommendations are a way for people to make suggestions for edits and changes to state law, state policy, and state agency rules. Policy recommendations offer solutions to systemic issues faced by Texans with disabilities. The GCPD policy recommendations come from two groups. The first group is our 12 committee members appointed by Governor Abbott, 7 of whom must be a person with a disability. The second group our policy recommendations come from is you, the public, when you reach out to our committee or attend one of our quarterly meetings and share your concerns or issues that you have faced and noticed here in Texas. So how do you start that process? If you've already identified a systemic issue affecting Texans with disabilities, you can reach out to GCPD staff to develop a policy recommendation. GCPD staff can help with completing the form. Or you can complete the form yourself and submit it to GCPD staff. Our GCPD policy recommendation form can be found on our GCPD webpage under GCPD reports. To make sure that you're staying up to date with what the GCPD is working on, make sure you subscribe to our GovDeliveries. We use our GovDelivery platform to share information about our quarterly meetings, upcoming events, and other important information related to people with disabilities. Make sure you go and subscribe. So a brief overview of what our policy recommendation form includes. Firstly, it has where you will state the proposed solution. Next is where you describe the issue. That is where you explain why you are making this proposal and what problem does this proposal solve. Next, you will explain the legislative history of this policy proposal. You can explain whether there have been filed in the Texas legislature in past sessions or whether other states have passed a law related to this policy proposal. Next, you explain the feasibility or how easy or hard it will be to make this change. You can explain whether it will be a large or a small change. Next, if you know any potential costs that are involved, you can go ahead and explain those. It could be related to hiring more employees or spending more funds. It could also be related to how this policy proposal can save the state money. Next, talk about which state agencies might be impacted. For example, if your policy recommendation is related to vocational rehabilitation funding, it could impact the Texas Workforce Commission. Or maybe it is related to Medicaid waiver services here in Texas, and it would impact the Texas Health and Human Services Commission. Lastly, make sure you provide your contact information so we know who to contact for more information and to invite you to a quarterly meeting to provide a presentation. So here you can see an image of the front and back of the GCPD policy form. You can find that form at gov.texas/organization/policy-form. Make sure you go ahead and fill out both sides of the form. GCPD staff are more than happy to help you complete the form if needed. Now, when you're ready to start developing the policy recommendation form, it is important that you fill out the most important pieces of the form. So first, the most important piece is, what is your proposed solution? That is where you describe the recommended changes or additions to state law, policy, and rules. The second most important piece is the issue description. That is where you state where barriers or issues led to the need for your recommendation. It is so important to explain how this issue is a system-wide issue and not a one-off issue. The last two important pieces to make sure you fill out are the legislative history and the feasibility, which means how hard or easy it is for this to effectively pass in Texas. So the legislative history is where you can look at the Texas legislature and see if there have been bills filed on this topic in previous sessions, and whether there were any successes in those sessions. You can also look at other states and whether they've passed laws on this and what that process looked like to achieve that. Would it be something that we could copy here in Texas? And so that leads to the next piece, the feasibility, which means how hard or easy it will be to pass. So it's important to look at what things will make it easier to pass and what will make it harder to pass. If you need any help with filling out these portions of the form, contact GCPD staff and we are happy to help. So now you've developed your policy recommendation, you might be invited to come and present at one of our quarterly meetings. While you come and present at our quarterly meeting, the committee will listen and ask you questions. After you've presented, they may decide to go and vote to accept or not accept your proposal. If it is accepted, the Office of the Governor Budget and Policy Team will vet the proposal. If it is accepted, it may be published in a GCPD annual or biennial report. So to summarize, you have 3 steps. First, you will come to a quarterly meeting to present, and the committee will decide to accept or not accept the proposal. If it is not accepted, that is an opportunity for you to edit your proposal with feedback from the committee. If it is accepted, it will go to step 2, where the Office of the Governor Budget and Policy Team and the Governor's Leadership Team will make sure that the policy aligns with the Governor's vision of Texas. If that is true and it does align, it will move to step 3, where it will be possibly added to the GCPD biennial report to the legislature and the governor, or to a report that is sent to state agencies here in Texas. So yay, your policy proposal has been accepted. It's been added to one of the GCPD reports. So now what do you do? It's really important to understand your role in this process. GCPD shares our biennial report with the legislature. However, we cannot contact them to advocate for specific policy recommendations. But you can. If you are a Texas resident, you can contact any member of the Texas legislature and chat with them about your policy to get their support. So you have 3 goals. First, your goal is to find a legislator who is willing to support your policy recommendation and translate that policy recommendation into bill language. It's very helpful to have a sponsor from both chambers, meaning the House and the Senate. Your second goal is to meet with advocates from other groups and other organizations to gin up support for your policy recommendation and your potential bill. Your third goal is to attend the legislature. Make sure you attend committee hearings if they are having a hearing related to your bill, or provide public testimony, either written or in person. Next is a more in-depth explanation for the process for a bill when it starts in the House and becomes a law. So first, it will depend on which chamber it is filed in. If it is filed in the House, it will start with an HB in front of it. It will say HB and a specific number, and that number will be anywhere from 1 to 4 numbers. It will then be referred to a specific committee. If it is referred, the committee has the ability to take different actions, such as holding a vote, hosting a hearing, collecting public comments, and testimony related to this bill. If the bill is voted favorably onto the next stage, it has 2 options. It can continue to the next part with substitutions and amendments, or it can continue to the next stage as is. If the committee holds a vote and it fails, it will not advance to the next stage. The committee might also never host a hearing on that bill. It can also be left pending after a hearing, which means it is dead. So if it is accepted as is, or accepted with amendments and substitution, the committee report will be printed and distributed, explaining the committee vote and whether there is a substitution. Next, it will be considered on the floor of the House. That requires placement on the House calendar to be considered on the floor. If that does happen, it will proceed to the second reading. During that second reading, the House of Representatives will have the opportunity to debate and potentially add amendments or edits to the bill. If it passes that stage, it goes to the third reading. The third reading is very similar to the second reading with the ability for debate and amendments. If it is accepted at this stage and goes to the next stage, it passes out of the House and is considered engrossed. That means that any amendments that were added to the bill are now considered part of that bill. The House will then send the bill to the Senate. When the Senate receives that engrossed bill, they will read it, and it will be referred to a committee by the Lieutenant Governor. Again, committees have the options of holding hearings, collecting public comments, and taking votes on this bill. If the committee does host a meeting and holds a vote, the bill can be voted favorably out of committee. If the vote occurs and the vote fails, the bill is considered dead. So again, to pass to the next stage, it will need to have a vote that accepts the bill as is, or a committee substitution or amendments on the bill. The committee will agree on a substitute and vote to accept that substitute, or they will take a vote and the vote will fail, and in that case, the bill is considered dead. The bill may also never have a hearing called or is left pending after hearing, and is then considered dead. If it does continue on to the next stage, it will be printed in the committee report and distributed. It will also be added to the regular order of business. If it proceeds to the next stage, called floor consideration, where the entire Senate can read and consider the bill, for that to happen, it requires placement on the intent calendar and a 5 out of 9 vote to suspend the regular order of business. If that happens and it receives the vote to suspend the regular order of business, it will proceed to the second reading. And again, the second reading is where senators will be able to read and debate and add edits or amendments. If that happens and it is accepted at that stage, it passes to the third stage, where again, there can be debate, amendments, and final passage. There are 2 different ways that the final passage might happen. It could be amended or it may be unamended, and those will have 2 different paths. If it is amended, the Senate must print and distribute their amendments and send them to the House. If the House looks over the amendments and agrees, the House will concur. However, if they do not, the House refuses to concur, which means they do not agree with the amendments and they must hold a conference committee. For the conference committee, each chamber, meaning the House and the Senate, will each appoint 5 members to the House. They will get together and debate and create a conference committee report. When they create the conference committee report, or CCR, they will distribute it to both the Senate and the House. Either the House and the Senate accept the CCR and it moves on to the next stage of the process, or the CCR is not adopted by either the House, the Senate, or by both chambers. In that case, the bill dies. So that is if the bill was accepted and either the CCR was adopted in both the House and the Senate, or if there were no amendments, it skips that CCR process and it becomes enrolled by the House clerk. After it is enrolled, it will be signed by the Speaker of the House and the Lieutenant Governor. Then it will be sent to the governor. When the governor receives it, he has several options. He can either sign the bill or just leave it. Either way, if he signs it or leaves it, which means to take no action, it becomes a law. The other option is that the governor decides to veto the bill, which means he doesn't agree with it and does not believe it should become law. If the governor vetoes it, the legislature can override the veto if they are still in session. If they do override the veto, the bill becomes law. However, if there is no override to the veto, the bill is dead and does not become law. So that is what the process looks like starting from the House. Next, we will describe what it looks like starting from the Senate. So you have reviewed the process for a bill that starts in the House and becomes a law. Now we can look at what it looks like when it starts in the Senate. So first, a senator will go ahead and file the bill. Just like the House has HB for House Bill, the Senate will have SB for Senate Bill. It will then be read and referred to committee by the Lieutenant Governor. Again, the committee can take several actions, including hosting a hearing, collecting public comment, and inviting witness testimony. The bill may then move on to the next stage, or it may not. If it is voted and passes with no amendments, as is, Or with amendments or a committee substitute, it can go on to the next stage. If the vote fails, or the bill is left pending, or there is no hearing on that bill, the bill is considered dead and does not move on. If the bill is accepted, the committee report will be printed and distributed. It will be added to the regular order of business. That report may include information such as how people voted or what amendments or committee substitutions there are. Next, it will go to the floor consideration where the Senate can read and debate the bill. For that to happen, it must be placed on the intent calendar and receive 5 out of 9 votes to suspend the regular order of business. If that occurs, the bill will receive a second reading, and that is where debate, edits, or amendments can be added. If it passes that portion of the process, it receives a third reading where, again, there can be debate, edits, or amendments to the bill. At that time, there will be a final passage by the Senate. If it does pass, it is considered engrossed, and any amendments that were made are incorporated into the bill. It will be sent out of the Senate and to the House. The House will receive the bill, read it, and refer it to a committee. Again, committees take the same actions such as hosting hearings, collecting public comment, or inviting witness testimony. And again, there are 2 options for the bill. It either passes to the next stage or it does not. If it passes, it can pass as is with an amendment or committee substitute. If it doesn't pass, that might be because a vote was held and failed, or it was left pending, or there was no hearing called on the bill. At that point, the bill is considered dead. If it goes on to the next step, the committee report is printed and distributed and sent to the appropriate calendar committee. That is where floor consideration happens, where the whole House is able to read and consider the bill, which requires placement on the House calendar. If that happens, it will go to a second reading, where the representatives can read, debate, and amend the bill. If it passes out of that stage, it then goes to the third reading, where, again, representatives have the ability to read, debate, and amend that bill. If it passes at this stage, it passes out of the House, and there will be 2 options. It passes out of the House amended or not amended. If it is amended, it will be sent to the Senate, and the Senate will decide whether they concur or they do not concur. If they do not concur, they will be required to have a conference committee where 5 members of the House of Representatives and 5 senators will meet to discuss and to try and agree on amendments for the bill. After they agree, they will distribute the conference committee report, CCR, to the Senate and the House. If both the Senate and the House accept it, the bill moves on. If the Senate and House, one of them or both of them, do not accept the bill is considered dead. So now, if it was accepted, it becomes enrolled. It is enrolled by the Secretary of the Senate. It is signed by the Lieutenant Governor and the Speaker of the House. After that, it will be sent to the Governor, where the Governor can decide to take several actions. The bill may become a law, or it may not become a law. He can either sign the bill or take no action, in which case it becomes a law. Or the Governor can decide to veto the bill. If he vetoes the bill, it will die and not become a law. However, the legislature can override a veto if they are still in session. If they do, that bill will become a law. If they do not, it dies. So that is what the process looks like from the Senate perspective. Now I'm going to explain a little bit more about accessibility at the Capitol. For more in-depth view of accessibility at the Capitol, please view the GCPD Effective Advocacy of Disability Topics with the Texas Legislature webinar, which can be found on our webpage or on our YouTube channel. The State Preservation Board also provides a Capitol accessibility guide with more information on accessibility here at the Capitol. The Senate ADA Coordinator phone number is 512-463-0400, and the House ADA Coordinator's number is 512-463-0865. So, is the Governor's Committee on People with Disabilities the only group that provides recommendation to the Texas Legislature? No, we are not. There are many other boards, commissions, committees, and councils working in Texas and providing policy recommendations to the Texas Legislature on people with disabilities. Some examples include the Continuing Advisory Committee for Special Education, also known as CAC, which is an advisory panel that advises the Texas Education Agency, TEA, on the needs of students with disabilities and special education in this state. It is required under the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, IDEA. Next is the Rehabilitation Council of Texas, or RCT. They advise the Texas Workforce Commission, TWC, on policy, scope, and effectiveness of the Vocational Rehabilitation VR program. Next is the Texas Council on Developmental Disabilities, TCDD. TCDD helps people with developmental disabilities achieve their potential for independence, productivity, and integration into their community through the development of a comprehensive system of services and supports. Next is the IDD, Intellectual and Developmental Disability Advisory Committee. The IDDAC is under the Texas Commission on Jail Standards. They review data on the confinement in county jails of persons with IDD, and they provide recommendations and guidelines to sheriffs and counties regarding the confinement of persons with IDD. Lastly are the HHSC advisory committees. There are over 25 Health and Human Services advisory committees. A few examples are the Early Childhood Intervention Advisory Committee and the Board for the Evaluation for Interpreters Committee. Go and explore some of the other advisory groups here in Texas. Thank you so much for watching our presentation on how to make a GCPD policy recommendation. If you need to contact me, my email is Rebecca, REBECCA, .LOPEZ at gov.texas, texas.gov. My phone number is 512-463-5739. And our office VP is 512-434-0102. Thank you again.